I don't think, Kevin, I've shared the story too many times, but you're probably the first person that 7 years ago, I was asking you, like, what do you think is coming down the pike? And you just shook your head. I still remember this moment so distinctly. And you said, everything is going to get turned so upside down with AI, and people have no idea. And that's because you were working on a lot of this stuff back then, and you had a front row seat to it. Tell us a little bit about where we are right now and how you're seeing this thing kind of, play out. And did you think this? Are you surprised with any of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be surprised. I think things have accelerated probably faster than I was expecting. So, like, none of this stuff is surprising, like what is happening. I think it was relatively clear, even those, like, 7 years ago when we were having these conversations, that, like, scaling laws were going to work, and that, like, the models were, and the systems that we built around them were going to be, like, very, very powerful in a general sense, and they were going to behave like a platform, and, like, people were going to be able to build lots of exciting things on top of them. So it was just a question of, like, how fast is all of this stuff going to happen? And I think it's happening faster than
you had thought.
than I would have predicted. But, like, what's happening doesn't seem like too terribly surprising. Yeah. And I think the things that are ahead of us are, I'm sure you all have been talking about this already. We really are not yet at the point of diminishing marginal return on the, like, capability increases in the platform infrastructure that is powering all of this change.
But at the same time, there's a capabilities overhang where people are using.
100%. Yeah. I've been, like, diatribing about this inside and outside of Microsoft for a few years. Like, the models are already way more powerful than what people are using them for. I think the closest glimpse that you're seeing to, like, true full utilization of model capability is in coding, and, like, it's an absolute frenzy right now in the state of software development. Like, you have very, very senior people and, like, best coders you've ever met in your life who are just completely overwhelmed trying to keep up with the rate of progress that's happening right now. And
simulate that out. What happens? There's a software engineering job. How does it change in the next?
Well, I think it becomes more of what, like, a good software engineers have always done. It's, like, less about the mechanics of, like, what characters are coming off of your keyboard and going into a text editor, and more about, like, do you really understand what it is that you're building and why, and like, how is value being created, and, like, how can you move faster, and recognizing what value you're creating for people and just sort of accelerating that rate of improvement. Like, that's what the best software engineers that, you and I have always worked with, like, have been able to do. And, I think that is still going to be, like, very true. Like, it's critically true right now because, like, you can produce a lot of code with these coding agents right now. There's nothing to say that it's good code.
No.
So, like, you can just sort of spray a bunch
Actually,
of
review
stuff.
has become the bottleneck.
Review is a bottleneck, and, like, people need to really make sure that they're not getting confused between activity and progress.
Yep.
I mean, and it's been the hard thing. Like, I've been managing software engineering teams for a very long, like, 25 years now, I think. And over that 25 years, like, I don't think any of us have ever really been able to say what constitutes actual engineering productivity. And, like, there's some things that you can obviously speed up a lot with AI systems. And, like, you can really see it with startups. So, like, there are these startups that are getting funded with an order of magnitude less money than they would have just 2 years ago, with, like, very small teams doing, like, crazy amounts of work and, like, moving very quickly. And, like, that's super, super exciting. But, it really is going to put the focus on choice and taste and, like, understanding of, like, your problem domain, your customer, and what you're trying to do. Like, that's the really, really critically important thing now.
And do you think the roles in the software development lifecycle will fuse and change and merge?
Yeah, look, and it's always changed.
Yeah, it's always changed.
Like, what I hope, honestly, like, this is Kevin's opinion, not Microsoft's opinion, but Yeah, I've been grumpy like an old fart for a whole bunch of years now that, like we have turned computer science education into like vocational education. Like like students like go get a CS degree because they want to learn how to be programmers. And like what I want people to go back to is learning how to be computer scientists.
Yeah.
Like
Be thinkers about
can you
the domain.
think algorithmically? Do you know how to decompose problems? Do you know how to choose the right problem to go spend your time and energy on? Like, do you understand like how the science of what you're doing fits into society and into the broader ecosystem of science that's happening around you? Like, do you possess the capability and the curiosity to like punch down through the layers of abstraction to like debug what's going on when the machine doesn't give you the result that you want? I mean, it's like all of those things are like the critically important things, and I think we'll get back to a lot of that. Because like a bunch of the vocational aspects of the software engineering job are just going to change so radically over the next handful of years that it's going to be unrecognizable.
Now, you've spent a fair amount of time thinking about the future and the good and the bad. So paint out two futures for us: the fundamentally optimistic one with AI, and one where it doesn't go quite the way that we would like it to go. And then I want to talk about Microsoft and how you folks are kind of working with that.
Yeah. So look, I think the optimistic story is probably the more likely one because it's going to be the necessary thing that has to happen. So, and it starts with like a thing that doesn't sound optimistic, but I was chatting with a friend the other day who runs like one of the premier educational institutions in Japan. And like he said this thing sort of offhanded to me that like took me aback. And he was like, yeah, this year is peak high school graduation in Japan. So Japan will graduate as many high school students as they're ever going to graduate in a single year this year, which means like from here on out, fewer high school seniors graduating, like fewer going to college, and it goes like down, and there's nothing to do about it. Sans like some crazy thing with immigration, and like there's just by looking at what the birth rates are, that's just precipitously going to go down.
Is it because of the demographics?
It's just demographics.
Just pure demographics in Japan.
Pure demographics.
Yeah.
And so like we know in abstract, right? Like the demographic data is super clear that Japan is in population decline. It's a little bit ahead of where like other places are, but like China, Korea as well, like a bunch of countries in Western Europe, the United States, sans immigration would also be like in population or would be in population decline over the next handful of decades. And so, like, you have this aging population.
It's actually a much bigger issue than people have.
And like you can even see it in the United States. Like there are these rural places, like where my mom lives, where the population is aging faster because just like the demographics are kind of unfavorable in like rural parts of the country, and it really has these massive implications that we don't talk about all that much. And like one of the implications is if you don't have as many people to do the work and you have more people who are going to create new forms of work for society to take care of like this elderly population that is growing very, very rapidly, something has to happen with the very nature of like how you get work done and what productivity looks like in order for you to maintain just the level of quality of life in society and like what we think of as normal in society, and like it doesn't happen for free. And so you have to have technological interventions. This is always the way that we've solved our productivity problems as a species. And so like I think the optimistic case is like, thank God AI has come along when it has, that like we actually have this and a handful of other technological things happening in the world right now that will give us at least a partial answer for what you do when you, over the next handful of decades, don't have the same labor dynamics as you've had over the, like actually the whole course of recorded human history. It's like a crazy thing that's happening that we just don't talk about all that much.
And so, AI becomes that kind of unlock that you need, otherwise like you
and it can't do everything, and it's not a substitute for it's not a substitute for all of the things that human beings do. Like I don't think anybody here wants it to be but it gives us an option for like how do you go sort out some of these crazy problems that otherwise would be very zero-sum and very, very challenging and destabilizing. And so, like, I am optimistic that we can, put our heads together, like identify all of those things that feel zero-sum. We need to turn them into non-zero-sum problems and then go tackle them and like have the good sense to have taste about how you put the technology into practice. So that's the optimistic case. The pessimistic case, like I won't give you the one, like you can just sort of pick your, like there's a palette of them right now. Like
Terminator happens.
Yeah. Or like, many, many things. Like, so my pessimistic scenario is that, like we get into some superficial mode about AI that, like we, instead of using it to go solve some of these super important problems with urgency, that like we use it to just further distract ourselves and, like a bunch of superficial, like I look at, my kids are like half and half, right? So like, half the time they're using AI in like really super ambitious ways to like do things, with, the biomedical engineering projects they're working on, or like, whatever their technical fascination is. And like, they're just way ahead of where I was when I was their age. And then the other half of the time they're using it to like, make pictures of, green llamas with big butts that they paste someone's face on. And it's like, okay, like, hey, that's a
good use of compute resource.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like my GPUs are on fire and like, this is why. Yeah, so like I hope that like we can resist the temptation to make the whole narrative about AI is like, okay, well, here's, the new sensational thing that happened over the weekend, or, like the new way that, a bunch of powerful people are going to throw darts at each other. And like, we can just make it more about like, what does society really need from this technology?
How long have you been at Microsoft now?
A long time. Like this is the beginning of my 10th year. So it's the longest I've ever worked anywhere.
And what's, in your mind, what's the most misunderstood thing about Microsoft in the world?
Well, I think maybe this isn't misunderstood, but like, you have to understand about Microsoft that it's a platform company. So like we don't really think about doing anything unless it's building something that someone else can pick up and then build another thing on top of. It's like wired into the DNA of the company, and, both for good and bad, right? It means that like we're really good at some things and like we're less good at others. And as a platform company with 5 decades of experience doing platforms, hyper successfully sometimes and less so other times. We just have infinite patience for the messiness of what comes with technological transformations like the one that we've got right now. Like a lot of patience. Like we're not waiting around to go do stuff until the ideal conditions exist for things to go maximally fast. Like we're gonna jump in early on a bunch of things. Like we're gonna get a bunch of things wrong. We'll get a bunch of things right. And like we will deal with the world as it exists, like not as we wish it might be. And like you know this as well. Like you've spent your entire career doing enterprise software. Like it's a messy business sometimes. Like you have to go make the thing that the customer wants and needs, and in some cases must have. It's like, it's not about changing someone's mind. It's about doing the thing that is necessary in a situation.
And so what's worse, what's the really bad thing about enterprise software, what's worse than having no customers, having one customer. You can never turn something off. Like you can only turn them on.
Yeah.
So.
But look, and at the same time, like that's an enormous privilege. If you sort of think about all the things that Cisco runs in the world and all of the things that Microsoft runs in the world, if you took all of those things away, like it would just be a grinding halt. And so, and I think you have to appreciate the privilege of, like all of that messy complexity, obligation that you have to make sure that all of these things work and they're up and they're available, and like when they are not available, that you like go dig in and understand what went wrong and make it better so it doesn't happen again. And for me as an engineer, like it feels great because this is what I've always been drawn to as a curious technical person, is like these platform problems, like making tools for other people to go use to like make things. Like it's even what I do in my hobbies.
I know that.
So like it's why I've been there as long as I have. Like I just super enjoy the challenge of like all of these messy platform problems.
So if you were to think of what has been the most surprising thing for you, what are you most proud of the contribution you've made at Microsoft? And then I want to talk a little bit about the hyperscaler business.
Yeah, I am proud. Like maybe the proudest thing I've done is helping to recognize the shift in AI from being a very narrow specialist thing where, like the way that we all did machine learning 20 years ago, like to the extent that we were doing machine learning at all, is you had a group of quantitative experts who were working on a very narrow problem, like predicting whether someone was going to click an ad or not in a particular context. Like that's a problem I worked on for a while.
A long time, yeah.
And like you would have your experts and your data related to that domain, and like you pick an algorithm and you go train a thing, and like you had your experimental pipeline, and like everything was sort of specific to that problem. And like being able to recognize that, like, okay, well, finally, the promise of more general AI is about to be realized, and then getting it through the partnership with OpenAI and a bunch of the things that we built together with them, like really out into the open.
I don't know if everyone realizes that Kevin was the initial architect of the partnership with OpenAI as they were first getting started. So it was like without that partnership, I don't think we would have actually in the world benefited from all the things that came after it.
Yeah, and whether or not that's true, like, the thing that I'm especially proud of is like I like a world where you actually have the capabilities of these platforms like out in the open, like where we can have a conversation like this, where it's not just like one Silicon Valley company that is building this thing on their infrastructure with their smart people, and then they decide what is going to get done with it, and it's like out there for anyone who can go sign up for an API key to like go start building something on top of. And like that democratization of like powerful AI capability is like a thing, like, whatever small role I had in that, like that I'm proud of.
Yeah, so on the hyperscaler side of the business, and how long do you think we stay in this constrained environment of infrastructure? What happens there?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's going to be constrained for like a while. Like, I keep thinking we're about to pull out, and then demand keeps, sort of exploding. Yeah. And like, I look at what's coming capability-wise over the next 12 months or so, and like, I just can't imagine, like, with the capabilities that I know are coming online, that there's going to be less demand for the product or for the capabilities that are coming. And yeah, so I think we're just looking at coding agents, like the most ambitious teams at Microsoft right now who are like fully using coding agents, where the thing that limits them is their available attention to manage the full complexity of what the agents are doing, cost about $150,000 a year in inference. And so a very tiny slice of even the community of software developers like have that degree of access and ambition right now for the product. But like they all could benefit from it.
Right.
And then you could apply that to a whole bunch of other things as well. So I just don't see how the demand for inference is going to go down. And it's hard to imagine like how you get into a state just given, like what the silicon situation is, the hardware situation, like how difficult it is to like build data centers and deploy power and all the things that you want to do, like how you get ahead of that anytime soon.
And does Microsoft build their own silicon just because there's not enough being built by all the current manufacturers? So you want to continue to do that? Or do you see yourself where Azure is going to be 99% built on Maya?
Yeah, look, this is the other, going back to your question earlier about like a thing people don't understand about Microsoft. Like we also for 50 years now have only been successful because we have all of these partnerships that we're doing. And so, like
We enjoy a great one with you.
yeah, so yes, we have our own chips, and like the chips are amazing, but like we also have gigantic fleets of NVIDIA hardware and gigantic fleet of AMD hardware, and like we have a huge amount of silicon diversity. Like part of that's driven by like what people want us to provide for them, and like part of it is driven by what we know about where our workloads are going and like what we need to build to like be maximally efficient. But like at any point in time, like we really like we built an infrastructure to manage the complexity of all of this stuff, and like whatever is most cost efficient is like the thing that we are going to go deploy at scale.
Last question. What's the one thing about the human approach to technology that you wish were different?
So say that one more time.
What's the one thing about how humans are approaching technology in this era right now that you wish were different?
So I just want everybody to remember that like the technology hasn't transformed into anything other than a tool, and like as a tool, it is there for us to do interesting things with, and so like I don't think that there's any kind of inexorable trend line about the technology that sort of dictates one path versus another. It's all about choices of like what we choose to do with the tool and how we prioritize things. And I think it's like really, really, really important for us to focus on like how we as individuals who are wielding the tool can do that in service of like our fellow human beings. Like I wish every day like we could all go into our jobs and think about what we're about to do and think, is this serving my fellow human beings well or not?
Right.
And if we did that, like we would be in a great place at the end of the day.
Last time I'd asked you this question, you had said it was a great answer you'd given me as well, which was, I wish people didn't actually think about things as zero-sum as we do.
Yeah.
Because it's very kind of zero-sum. In order for me to win, you have to lose, and I just don't think that's the way that the world's going to evolve.
Yeah, and look, the zero-sum problems are miserable. Like they're all about like scarcity and constraints, and like winners and losers. And like the thing that I think we really want from our technology is for it to take as many of those any of those like zero-sum things that are like real challenges for us and turn them into non-zero-sum things. Like it's like, honestly, it's the reason to go do technology.
Kevin, we should do this more often. It's such a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, pleasure to see you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.